Welcome into Hoops Forum, a production of Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and my co-host again this week is Randy Sherman. Big thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. We've been telling you about the 323 Sports famous $55 team packs, and they actually have an equally as popular $99 team pack, which gives you more customization and includes some new pieces of apparel, including some of the sweatshirts and other things that are good for these colder months. To find out more about what 323 Sports can do for your program, visit 323sports.com, or you can contact a sales rep at sales@323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your basketball program. Randy, we are approximately midway through the season here. Some may be a little bit past that mark. College coaches, maybe you're entering the midseason time.
Yeah.
General thoughts for coaches that you would have here to start out about anything, really.
Yeah, mid-season, I would say it's kind of like maybe the point of the season that like the way I broke it up when I coached was sort of like before the holiday break, the Christmas New Year break or whatever, and then after. Typically when I coached after New Year was mainly just our district opponents. Think like your conference in college basketball, like the Big 12 or the Big 10, like that. That was kind of all the play after that was all district opponents. Prior to that, we might be in some tournaments and playing non-district opponents and things like that. So um, I think in the mid-season, there's two thoughts that come to mind. Is one, the importance of getting road wins, like just and how tough that is, and how much of a challenge that can be if you're in a good competitive league where there's not a whole lot of, you may be a little bit better or a little bit worse than the rest of the group, but there's good competitive balance. And in basketball, it's just really hard to win on the road in a raucous gym on the road that you have to travel, and you already start out with some adversity against you. So, man, like I used to think about, getting a road win was almost like getting a win and a half, or um, just the toughness and mental, the kind of compartmentalization you need to kind of just flush errors and flush bad events and just get a road win. And I always encourage coaches, you get a road win in your league against a team that you're just, kind of equal with, like, don't spend too much time like picking at the perform. Just like, hey, man, good, we got to win. Let's get back on the bus and get out of here. The second thing, by this point in the season, you kind of have a good picture of what your team is and what they aren't. For six of the 8 seasons that I've been working with basketball coaches, we've kept like a big statistics, just basic analytics stuff, nothing major, just 4-factor stuff, and just maybe a few other stats of interest. But and kind of with this amount of sample size, mid-season, you kind of, all right, like, this is who we are, this is what we're good at, this is what we're not good at. I've spoken to coaches who like, okay, man, we've got this much of our season left. We're really going to commit to improving our whatever, and it just doesn't improve that much. Like, it's kind of like by now we kind of know what we are and what we aren't, and it doesn't mean we're still not fighting for improvement. The good news, if there is some things that you look at like this is who we are and you don't like it, is you can learn to sort of like look at the positives and just lean more into that. Like, if you're not a great free throw shooting team or something, but you're good at like pressing and forcing turnovers, we'll just go bigger on that and try to offset the weakness by really doubling down on your strengths. So you by now, you know who you are. You're probably not that that's etched in stone, but you probably have an idea of who you are and what you can do with that.
Let me start out with like practice structure and kind of tie it back to what you just said there. So when it comes to like what you're practicing in practice, would you encourage coaches to kind of like the doubling down on what you're good at, kind of your structure reflect that and what you do?
Sure. I would say if there's something that we're doing that's giving us margin over our opponents. And then that's something we can cling to as like, hey, we can do this as a group. We can do this. We can make threes. We can force turnovers. We can. We're a good free throw shooting team. Whatever that thing is that you're doing at a level that's outperforming your opponents as a group. I would say lean into that and start and go big on it. And by that, obviously, would mean devote more practice time to it and make it more of a foundational piece of what's going to be your recipe for victory going forward to the second half of the season. This is completely anecdotal, but I have found more leverage in sort of going big on strengths rather than like, okay, we're terrible at rebounding, or so we're going to work on it and work on it and work on it. I have just found it to be a little bit more needle moving to say, this is what we're good at. We're going to do more of it and dial it up even more extreme and give it more practice time and more of our practice structure devoted to it. I have found that to be anecdotally more of a needle mover.
Did length of practice change at all for you?
A little bit. I would say, the thing I liked about the latter half of the season is our games tended to then fall on like a more predictable calendar, meaning we kind of played on Tuesdays and Fridays every week from after the holiday break to the finish of the regular season. So now we can kind of get into a routine, like you hear NFL coaches talk about. We play on Sunday, so our Monday looks like this, our Tuesday looks like that. We, and I think we as humans sort of thrive in that, where there's a routine. We know what today is going to be: short and quick, longer, more intense on this day, a little bit of film and weights on this day, and we kind of fall into a routine. I kind of kept that sort of like a to be determined on practice length. I just tried to get a gauge on how our legs were feeling and what our energy levels were, and just adjust as needed, not necessarily making a predetermined decision. Okay, on this date we're going to cut back from 90 minutes to 1 hour. If I just sort of tried to keep a finger on the pulse of my team, but typically it didn't change much. Maybe a little shorter, a little quicker, but not by much.
What was the balance, like drills versus kind of playing more? I know already you kind of lean more towards playing more, but and whether that's, I mean, you can go into detail with that. Like, are you doing 3-on-3? Is it 5-on-5? Is it a combination of that kind of thing?
Yeah, it'd be a combination of all of that. I kind of found myself just like reminding myself in this part of the season, like don't negate shooting and shooting and shooting. Like, don't get so caught up in like we got to get competitive, or we got to do walkthroughs and prepare or put in things that we just, it's like a golfer keeping their swing finely tuned, like we're not going to get away from that and get too into other things. So that was one reminder I kind of had to always give myself, was don't borrow from that time to do other things, and just keep our just shooting skills and shooting mechanics finely tuned. So because that's gonna make or break us. So don't neglect that. Drill wise and things like this, like by this time of the year, like, I don't know, like if we're not able to sort of execute things that our drills teach us, and we're not able to carry that stuff over, I don't know that more of it's gonna change that. Like, why aren't we able to do this by now? And I would present it in a different way, or just sort of like not necessarily throw my hands up that like, oh, we're not going to be good at this, but like, what's what's another drill working on it another way going to do, like, so I would say try to get competitive, keep our mechanics sharp, and make sure we show up on game night physically ready to play.
Yeah. How much new do you feel like is good to add, or if any?
Uh, just enough, just a little bit. I did some of that, like we're getting into the part of the season. I know you and I talked about before the show that we were going to maybe touch on this, where you might be playing an opponent for a second time, or you play opponent home and away in your league or district or conference or whatever. So yeah, wrinkle here and there. I'm not a big add a bunch of stuff guy by nature anyway, so I didn't do much of that. But I know I've seen it done and had it done to me from teams we play. Like, oh, we haven't seen that before. Or there's something new from them. I just never had a lot of faith in that personally. But yeah, so not much would be my answer for me personally.
You mentioned the playing a second time, and I think that for coaches, there's always a little bit of you don't want to show everything, but on the flip side of that, you also want to win the first game. And I think a lot of us probably have already played most of our opponents that first time already, and now you're getting into that second time. Did you do any kind of pre-planning? Like, this is what it'll look like the first time, this is what it'll look like the second time?
I did not. Not really. We kind of maybe more in the Bob Knight, Tony Bennett camp. Like, we run motion and man to man. Like, that's what you're gonna get, and like that's what you're gonna get, and so no surprises necessarily from me, or no like, hey, we're gonna hold this back. Maybe I can remember one team who we were in the same district with for 3 years, and so we play them twice, and we won the district a few times, and but for some reason we just couldn't beat this team. They were like a little thorn in our side, and so over the course of 3 years we're going to play them 6 times, home and away, and I think they beat us 5. And on the 6th game, I think I finally wised up to say, like, okay, they beat us 5 times in a row, Randy. Let's maybe do something dramatically different to see if we can break that curse. And but only in an extreme example like that did I really kind of roll something different out.
Yeah. I think it in large part determined by, how many plays do you have, or how many things do you already do? And I think that goes back to the adding thing. We're both, I think, of the subtracting as you go along and getting rid of the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
So if you do have 100 things, you're probably not doing the 100 things very well. But I know there's also that balance of you want enough things because you may end up seeing a team a third time. But then obviously that can take away, if you're constantly doing new, then that takes away from focusing on the things that you're actually good at. That probably is what's going to win you the game anyways.
Yeah.
So that balance, I know just for like young coaches, they think that there has to be something new that I do. I have to do something different this time. And
there's nothing wrong with that. I definitely, I think there's, I think there's 2 camps of coaches. I think Bob Knight was famous for saying this. There's sort of like simplicity and execution. Like, some coaches like him who just this is what we're going to do: motion and man to man. We're going to get great at it. And then there's sort of like the surprise and change camp of coaches who kind of game plan and do. So either one of those can be effective. One thing I tried to do was sort of teach our players to sort of play on like a little bit of a deeper level. So like in the years I ran a lot of motion, it's like it's based on reading the defense. Like we set an off-ball screen, pass and screen away, and then we don't know what cut we're going to make off of that screen. We might, but it's based on the defense. So why do I need to add anything? Like, you can only, on that given screen, you can only guard it one way at a time. So we can get a good shot if we'll just read the defense. So if game 1 they trailed us and we curled everything for layups there, and they come out the next game and do that again, and like we're going to do the same. We'll curl them for layups again. And if they go, oh, we didn't like that. In the game 2, we play them. We're going to go under the screens and we'll pop cut them for threes. So, okay, whatever, so like, and even in the years I got more spread and ball screen oriented, the ball screen stuff, like what can they do? They can switch, they can hedge, they can go under, they can trap. Like, okay, we teach our players to recognize those things and find the antidote. So, okay, change. You can change, but we're not. We're just going to read whatever adjustments you made and execute.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on playing fewer players, shortening your lineups or shortening your bench?
Like I can see that value in that as the value of the games, the pressure mounts. Like, we got to win this to get into the postseason, or we've got to win this to move up in the standings so we can get a good seed in the tournament, or power points or whatever. I understand the motive for like shortening the bench because the value of the outcome goes up. I definitely get that. I personally took the opposite approach. I was always looking for like one more depth piece, like one more player who can maybe give us like a few minutes of great defense, or just run the floor hard so I can get some miles off the legs of a starter, or we can withstand a bad whistle or two, something like that, like. So I was always looking for like one more depth piece. If we had 9, I wanted 10, because you never know, man. Like, someone going to get hurt, foul out, turn up with the flu, something like that, like be declared ineligible, whatever, things happen. So I personally, maybe I would say, took the opposite approach of like, I stayed on the hunt for like, man, can I get one more player to give us significant time, even if it's 5 minutes or something like that. So, but I certainly get when the stakes raise, why one would just sort of, okay, these are my 6 best players, the ones that I trust. Sorry to you other guys, like, it's just not going to happen. But I've done both, but.
Yeah. So as we kind of like wind things down, just general warnings that you would have for coaches, whether that's kind of something that you kind of alluded to already or just something new, but things to think about as they kind of enter the stretch run.
I'd say 2 things come to mind. If you've got a good team, I would just sort of like warn you that like a dud is coming, meaning like we're gonna go play a game that we're playing the 5th place team in the conference and we're first and we're a lot better than them, and just like it's seemingly out of nowhere, even if we had good practices, or like you're gonna have a game that's kind of like, that was a stinker. Maybe you survive it and win, maybe you don't. You see it all the time in like, how did, like, oh, you see at the end of the year, they're talking about an NFL team or a college basketball team. Oh, they lost 4 games. And one of them was like, how'd they lose to them? Like it happens. So if it hasn't happened yet, my warning would be it's probably going to come, and it's going to bother you, and but just try not to overreact to it. And it might be what you need is if you've got a good team. For those of you listening who maybe don't have a great team, you were 20 games in out of a 30-game season, and just, I would say my warning to you would be, let's start just like thinking developmentally, and I'm not saying give up hope that we can pull off an upset or 2. I'm not saying that, but like, start thinking about who are my returnees and who's coming back, and let's almost like coach next year's team this year, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
My warning would be, you're missing out on development opportunities if you're like, trying to win this game against a team so you're putting in all this stuff and trying to do. I would say, as hard as it may be to just sort of admit, if you will, that like, hey, this isn't we're not state material or national championship material. Like, let's start thinking about development a little bit more. I'd say one more warning would be, we touched on it already, and I was guilty of this a time or two, of like putting new stuff in. Like, oh, I'm going to put this in for, like, playoffs or whatever, and devote some practice minutes to it. And this is what so then, we devote some practice minutes to what, maybe it's a new set or a baseline out of bounds or something, whatever, press break or offense or something. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Defensive, put in a zone defense out of nowhere or something. This would be my warning to you. And this is if you got a team that's going to be in the playoffs and in meaningful postseason games. I put that stuff in, and then when I get in the heat of battle in the postseason game, in the actual game, I found that I didn't call it. I didn't do it in the game because we played 30 games. Like, I'm sort of like, it's almost like you got players you trust, right? So we're only running the things in the heat of the moment, a loud gym, on the road, win or go home situation. You're going to sort of like, your base O and your base D is probably what you're going to lean on and trust in that moment. I never really got to the point where, like, I could feel great about, we put something in on Thursday and we're going to go run it in a game on Friday in a single elimination bracket. Like I don't feel great about that. Like, I'm going to run, you're going to end up when the pressure is on, you may not even consciously be thinking of it, but you're going to look back and go, yeah, all we ran was motion and man-to-man, and I devoted these practice minutes to putting in all these wrinkles. But then when it got in the pressure, my coaching behavior was just to sort of lean on what we put in back day one of practice 4 months ago. So my warning, what I would say is, I would have rather had that practice time back to work on shooting, maybe just brushing up what we, some of the issues in our base offense and making it a little bit better, than putting something in that when the chips are down, I didn't call it anyway, because somewhere in my back of my head, I was like, I don't feel great that we're going to go out there and execute that.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, probably your level of confidence reflects their levels of confidence as well in running those new things. And so you might as well stay away from it.
I think so. I think just sort of like, when the saying goes, like, we're going to kind of like, our habits are going to take over in those moments, right? And I would say the majority of the season exists to sort of build those habits that are going to support you when the pressure is really on.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned earlier the coaches that you work with. Can you explain that program and where people can find out about that?
Yeah. I've been kind of serving as an advisor or mentor to coaches for, sort of like a partner with coaches for 8 seasons now. Just reach out to me, Randy at radiusathletics.com, if you're interested in learning more about how to affiliate with me and the group, and get the help and get the extra set of eyeballs and input. Right now we've got teams, mostly high school, a few college. I've worked with some professional coaches over the years, but mostly high school coaches who are in this part of their season where they're really looking for an edge, and many believe that being a part of this program gives it to them. So yeah, just reach out to me over email, Randy at radiusathletics.com.
A lot of different things that Randy can do for you. Another set of eyes, ears, suggestions, kind of a virtual assistant coach, and more. So
yeah,
I'd encourage you to take him up on that offer.
A lot of therapy sometimes too. Like, it's okay, coach, it'll be all right. Like,
that's what we need. That's what a lot of us need this time of year. Yeah. Thanks to all of you who joined us this week. If you missed any part of the live show, you can go back and watch or listen. Just search Hoops Forum on YouTube to watch the full interview, or you can go to any podcast platform and search A Quick Timeout, and there you'll find the audio version of the show. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again next time on Hoops Forum.